Now, we talk about champions. We have one of the greatest of all time, a future Hall of Famer, the man who, for a very long time, was the king of the UFC's middleweight division. Looking forward to hearing what's next from him. We have Rich Ace Franklin on the phone right now. Rich, how are you?
I'm real well, Ariel. How are you doing today, bud?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much for joining us for a few minutes here. Really appreciate it. So we haven't really heard much from you since November, your loss to Kung Lee. Where do you stand now? I started thinking about you a lot because I was talking to Matt Hughes, and he said that he called you recently to tell you not to retire. He wants to see you keep fighting. Where do you stand now in your career?
Yeah, I heard about that. We spoke about that and everything. And I think actually this is the first interview that I've done since my Kung Lee fight. And
thank you for that.
Well, yeah. So you're welcome. And I'll tell you what. I haven't really. I haven't been sitting on my end thinking about retirement. I don't want people any of the fans out there thinking like, oh, well, Rich is really just contemplating retiring. I've really kind of just. The loss to Kung was a big setback for me, unexpected in my camp, and kind of sitting here thinking like, well, what's my next move going to be? And I realized that I'm 38 years old, and my time is limited in the sport. I know that I'm not going to be fighting for another 10 years, and I have to start thinking about the things that I'm doing outside of MMA. So at this point in time, I'm actually out in LA currently, and I'm looking at some retail locations for an organic juice business that I'm opening up, and we were looking at like some possible opening dates and things like that, and the opening dates have gotten shifted back a little bit. But what that's basically done is just kind of pushed back my fight training for fight prep and all that kind of stuff. So in the meantime, I've been putting some time into this, knowing that this is going to be the next step for me when I'm done fighting, and it's kind of pushed that stuff back. But I haven't really begun talking about retirement or anything like that, and that wasn't my intention or plan. And I think that because it's been since November that people have really heard from me, that they think that that's possibly what's going on. I'm just kind of laser focused into something else for the time being.
Which direction are you leaning towards right now?
Meaning
to continue fighting at some point, or to maybe not fight again?
Yeah, I have. I'd have to check my contract. I have at least one more fight, possibly two more fights left on my contract. And I've always said that I would definitely like to fulfill my contract. So, looking at that, I at least have that much. I don't know, and I'm not saying that I only plan on fighting once or twice more or whatever. But as soon as I get this stuff going on my end with this juice business and things are kind of moving in the direction that they should be moving, then I'm going to be focused more on, instead of recreationally training, I'll be focused more back on specific fight training again, and I'll look at taking another fight at that point in time, which could possibly be I'm hoping possibly before the end of the year.
So the juice business, when does it get up and running?
So the concept, the name of the business is Zealand, so we can just refer to it by name. And I have a confirmed location, and we're going through. We got to cross the T's and dot the I's, so to speak, on a contract that we're looking at in Beverly Hills, and that'll be our first retail location that's opening up. I'm actually in LA today. I'm walking around Brentwood looking at a possible second location. So I just left Santa Monica and I came over here, and this is what I've been looking at. And so at this point in time, if everything goes correctly, we should have something open by August 1.
Wow. Well, congratulations on that. And, it's funny because I'm actually really into juices these days. What kind of juices are we talking about here?
Everything. What we're going to offer, there are three main things that we offer at Zealand. That we're going to offer organic juicing. Basically, kale is a big buzzword in the juice industry now. So things like juicing, things like kale and cucumber and beets and carrots, and we have a chef that's working on some things and putting some preset recipes together with not just juices but also with some different spices, and we're trying things with herbal teas and whatnot. But then we're also just going to have kind of a create your own, and you'll see that in a lot of these organic juice places as well. But we're also aside from the juices, we're going to be offering acai bowls, and we have these amazing low-calorie vegan pastries that are vegan. They're made with no butters, oils, or eggs or anything. And we have these cookies, for example, like a chocolate chip cookie. Normal size chocolate chip cookie only has 27 calories in it, And if I gave you this cookie and said, hey, Ariel, try this cookie, which at some point in time I will, and you ate one of them, you would say, there's no way this cookie is low calorie. I'm calling shenanigans. So we have some great products that we're going to be offering. I'm really, really, really excited about it. And basically, the overall the business concept here is just it's about making healthier life choices. That's what it's all about for us.
Does this mean you're leaving the Ohio area?
No, I will for some time. I've been in and out of Ohio and L.A., moving back and forth, and I've spent some weeks out here in L.A. actually kind of laying the groundwork for this. But no, my home is in Ohio. I'll be spending some time out in L.A., and I'll be splitting some time 50-50, 60-40, whatever. There'll be times where I'm out here in L.A. longer than I'll be in Ohio. But my home is in L.A. or in Ohio, and I don't plan on leaving.
You mentioned this is your first interview since the loss to Lee, which was in early November in Macau. Why have you remained quiet? Was that something you wanted to do? Things didn't just, were you not getting interview requests? That's a long time for someone of your stature to remain quiet.
No, it's not that I didn't get interview requests. To be real honest with you, you get interview requests, Errol, and people they want to rehash a fight and they want to talk about a fight, and there's really so I fought in Macau and got a little complacent in the fight, got caught and got knocked out, and there's really not a whole lot to recap other than that. So doing interview after interview after interview after that fight, you're just reliving a loss, which is not a fun thing to do. So until somebody was and enough time passes where you're just like, whatever, I'll jump on an interview, or people want to talk about something, not just the fight, but other things as well, then you become slightly more attracted to doing that. And so, it hasn't been for a lack of interview requests for sure.
How long did it take for you to get over a loss like that?
Every loss is unique, but this one kind of took a while. I'd moved back down to 185. I had a great performance prior to that against Vanderlei in Brazil, and was feeling really good. My body was in great shape. I conducted my camp down in at least half of my camp down in Singapore at Evolve for that fight, and things were going really well. I did everything that I needed to do, made all the sacrifices that I needed to make for that fight. And I think going into that fight, because camp had gone well and I'd made the sacrifices that I needed to make, I never could see how I would have ever lost that fight because of that. And then when you come up on the short end of the stick, you're stuck wondering, it's just one of those things where oftentimes when you lose a fight, you can at least sit in your locker room, or when you go back to the drawing board, you can look and say, well, here's where I messed up. There were maybe a day where I cut this practice short, or I should have spent more time doing this, or I should have been doing that, or for that fight, I put myself pretty much in the same time zone for a month prior to, and I was away from home. I was out of the country, and all that stuff was, I'm down at Evolve there. I made all these sacrifices, surrounded myself with good training partners, and took some of my coaches from Ohio down there with me as well. And things didn't work out. And so when that happens, you kind of leave that situation scratching your head saying, what more could I have possibly done? And the answer to that question really is nothing. And it just, things happen the way they do sometimes. So it takes a little while.
When you had that fight, you had just turned 38. Do you think you get caught the way you did against Kung at 28? Same result? Like, some people wanted to tie it to your age. These things happen when you get older in combat sports. Do you think it had nothing to do with that?
When you ask me this question, my natural gut instinct is to say no. I don't really think my age played a role in that. But then I start asking myself, well, am I just being naive here? Is that the case? Do I fall into the category of people who would say, yeah, my age didn't play a role, and I'm the only one who doesn't see it? I've sat down and had these conversations with my coaches before, and said to them, hey, if you see me in practice at a point where you think, look, Rich, you've kind of lost a step, and it's time for you to let go or whatever. So let me know. Honesty in that situation is the best policy. And so, I've had these talks with my coaches, and like I said, I think that with this fight in particular, I got a little too relaxed in the fight and got complacent, and that's probably why I got caught. But yeah, there's always that in my mind. I'm very analytical about things, so I'm sitting here kind of questioning that, is that the case or is it not the case, and especially at this age? But, when you're talking to people like Matt, you brought up Matt Hughes and stuff like that, and when people like that are talking about it's really not time for you to retire and you're getting that affirmation from other fighters, then it lets you know that, okay, then maybe this is not just an age thing, and I don't need to let that kind of stuff get inside my head.
So what happened there? Matt just called you after the fight out of the blue, and what was that conversation like?
Matt's Matt. You know how forward Matt is, but basically just talking about the fact that sometimes when you're late in your career like that and you suffer a loss, obviously retirement is one of those things that crosses your mind. And Matt, he's fought into an older age as well, basically is the voice of reason there sometimes, that you need that positive reinforcement and that positive encouragement saying like, hey, look, I don't believe it's time yet for you to walk away. So that, like I said, that kind of stuff just at this stage of the game keeps you motivated and confident. And
you mentioned talking to your coaches. What are they telling you?
Well, I've sat down with my boxing coach Rob before, and we've had these questions on many occasions, and it's difficult not to do. Here's what I've learned, Ariel, that when I'm getting ready for a fight, when I was a really, really young fighter, like every time I came into the gym, if I had a bad day, or I was, you have good days and you have bad days when you're training in the gym. And when you have a bad day, like every time you come into the gym when you're a young fighter, you view that as a fight. Like today's training is exactly like if my training partner gets the better of me, then it's, in my mind, it's like mentally like I've lost that fight. And when you get to this age, you start questioning like, okay, if my training partner got the better of me today, is that because of my age? You start questioning these things. And so I've learned, though, at an older age that you have to not use your practices to gauge these things. You're going to have good days in the gym and bad days in the gym, and then you don't have to worry about winning or losing a fight until the appointed time of the fight. But that's what your coaches are there for. They're there to see how you're doing against your training partners and the guys that you have been training with and seeing. And when you bring training partners in for a camp and seeing how you perform against these guys and saying like, Rich, things don't look the same that they look, whether it be 3 camps ago or 5 years ago or whatever the time frame was. Things don't look the way they looked this many years ago or whatever, or your reaction time isn't the same or whatever. And I haven't had that problem with my coaches and stuff. I mean, these are the kinds of things that they study in between rounds when they're advising you and coaching you and doing this stuff like, okay, here's what you got going on. This is what you're doing. You're dropping this hand, or you're this or that, or your timing's off today. And you have days where your timing's off, but if you have a day where your timing's off, and those days seem to be more often than not, that's when you have to start questioning those things. But my coaches haven't started seeing those patterns yet, so I'm not really worried about it.
Have you talked to Dana White about this?
No, Dana called and checked on me after the fight just to make sure everything was okay, and then I told him that all was well. After a fight, you're a little depressed, but physically I was in good shape and not injured and all those kinds of things. And so, they basically, the UFC said, just let us know when you're ready to get back in there. So when I get to a good breaking point with this juice business is when I'll give them a call and say, okay, it's time to rock and roll. Let's do another one.
Do you think it'll be at 185?
Probably. It's as I get older, and TRT has been a big discussion in the MMA world, and as I get older, it's more and more difficult for me to maintain that weight, especially at a heavier weight. My natural body set point is right around 205 to maybe under 210, somewhere between 205 and 210, closer to the 205 range, and that's just not heavy enough to be fighting guys at the 205-pound weight class. Fighting Forrest, for example, was a really tough fight for me because he's just so much bigger than me, and it was a lot of weight. He was on top of me in my guard that entire first round, and it's a lot of weight to constantly be pushing off of you when guys like that are coming into the fight at 230 plus, and I'm lucky if I'm over 210. So, yeah, I'll probably be sticking at 185, but I mean, who knows? This loss to Lee, unless I'm willing to put another 2 or 3 years or whatever into into working towards a title fight again back at 185 or something like that. This loss to Lee has really set me back. So it's not like the next fight will put me in title contention necessarily at 185. And with that being the case, then maybe the UFC will want to do a catchweight fight with me. Maybe the UFC will want to do a light heavyweight fight with me. You never know. And I've been open to doing these kind of, super fights or whatever. Just something that's attractive to both the UFC and the fans. And so my intention would be to fight again at 185, but I've always been and always have been open to the options that I'm presented with, when the UFC needs a specific something filled or whatever.
I remember when you were on the show a few months back, you were against using TRT, even though it was suggested to you. Do you still have that stance?
Well, let me just say this, so that I can explain the way that I really, truly think about testosterone. I believe that the human body is healthiest when it's at the age of 25. And so replacing your hormones from a health standpoint to that age bracket is the best case scenario. I've bought into this philosophy. However, there's a fine line there when you're using testosterone to kind of age yourself. I'm 38 years old, and the reality of this whole situation is, for somebody like me, if I'm 38 and I don't have the testosterone to compete against a 25-year-old man anymore, then it's just time for me to say, you know what, I don't have what it takes to compete against a 25-year-old person. I can't use something to give myself that edge, basically, to equal out the testosterone levels. And so there's a big difference for me between doing something for health reasons and doing something for performance reasons. And the reality of the entire situation with testosterone is that the public, a large percentage of the public, at least within that realm, views testosterone as cheating by athletes, whether you have a TUE or not. And so I just would personally rather not deal with it's not. I have a certain image that I wouldn't want to tarnish, and I would rather not deal with any of that kind of backlash with fan response and all that kind of stuff, and with the way that I personally view it with, the differences between aiding yourself in sports performance and just pure health. I would rather hold off. If I had low testosterone levels, I'd rather hold off until I was done fighting. And I think it was actually you and I that talked about this before, Ariel. I'm not at those crucially low testosterone levels. I'm obviously lower than I was at 25, but that's just the natural male aging process. And so I'm not at those crucially low levels. I'm sure I'm at low enough levels that I could play the numbers and all that kind of stuff to get my TUE, but I don't want to do that. It's not the way that I plan on doing things. I've stuck it out this long, and there's no sense in ending my career that way and leaving my reputation as having a bad taste in certain people's mouths. Proverbially saying or whatever. That's I don't want to do that. I have a certain reputation, and I'd like to keep it intact that way until I'm done fighting, and then. What I decide to do with testosterone in my retirement and all that kind of stuff, if my numbers were low, is then my business rather than a sports performance issue.
Just a couple minutes left with Rich Franklin. We do appreciate the time, Rich. Speaking of your health, I noticed from following you on Twitter, listening to interviews and in the past, reading interviews, articles, etc., you're very health conscious these days. I mean, on your Twitter feed alone, and you're opening this juice store. Did this come to you later in your career? Did you have an epiphany that you needed to change, or were you always this way and I just wasn't noticing?
Okay, here's the thing with me, Ariel, and a lot of fans don't know this, but if I showed you a picture of me when I was in high school, like you would not believe the way I looked. I graduated from high school 155 pounds, dripping wet, fully clothed. And I was the third string high school football player for my football team. This is the reality of the situation. I was not some phenomenal athlete who was groomed into being an MMA fighter. I was this third-string high school football player who dreamed of playing college ball. If you've seen the movie Rudy, I was that guy, literally. And I wasn't good enough to play college ball, and I got into martial arts. And at the same time, the UFC started, and I took an amateur fight, and this eventually led to a professional career. But initially, when I got into nutrition, for me, it was all about putting on muscle. And fortunately, my freshman/sophomore year of college, for that year, I hit another growth spurt. I grew like another inch and a half in college and put on my freshman 35 basically. So by midway through my sophomore year, I was walking around at about 190 pounds and looked like a completely different person. And fortunately, I was into nutrition, and I was nose deep in muscle and fitness magazines and things like that. And I was reading about protein and how to put muscle on. And so most of the weight that I gained was good quality muscle. And so for me, initially, nutrition was all about putting on muscle and putting on muscle. And then it slowly started morphing into like, what about sports performance, recovery from workouts and things like that. And that's why juicing is really a big part of my life right now. It's an easy way for me to get in my vitamins and minerals and everything. And so, yeah, I'm big on that. And of course, what happened was my dad had a massive heart attack in 2008 at a young age, at the age of 56. And I spoke to him till I was blue in the face about healthier lifestyle choices and working out and nutrition and all these kinds of things. And it didn't do any good. All that conversation fell on deaf ears. But losing my dad at a young age basically left me with like kind of this desire to say, if I can educate people about making better life choices and healthier life choices and how to take care of themselves better, then that's what I'm going to do. And so nutrition is one of those things for me that I could sit here and talk nutrition with you all day, and I'm sure you have other guests and no time or maybe not even the interest to hear all that. But yeah, I have been this way for quite some time since I was in high school, basically.
And this is a good time. I feel like society is warming up to this. Your father may be a different story, but don't you get that sense? Like you talk about kale, and then where I live in Brooklyn, it's all healthy this, organic that. It really makes it a lot easier these days. It seems like things have really changed in the last 10 years or so.
Well, it's so true. Listen, I was talking. I'm from Cincinnati, and so the thing about Cincinnati is when something happens in the world, it typically happens 10 years later in Cincinnati. And I was having a conversation with my brother on the phone the other day about juicing, and he asked me, and he said, "What are you going to charge? Like, what are your price points for juices?" And I said, "Well, we'll set that. I'm not sure, but typically like a 16-ounce juice is somewhere around $8." And he's like, "Whoa, $8 for a juice?" And I said, "Well, Greg," I said, let me ask you a question. I said, if you went to a restaurant and you ate I said, would you ever pay $8 for a nice big salad with all these different vegetables in it and all that? And he's like, "Yeah, I probably would." I said, "Well, imagine you being a busy business person and you want to get all the vitamins and minerals of that salad in, but you don't want to have to sit and eat the whole thing. You can come to Zealand and we juice it for you, and then you basically have that salad in a bottle, and you have all the vitamins and minerals that you pretty much would need for the entire day." And so for somebody who's busy, it's worth your $8 to be able to do that. It simplifies things. Now there are other health benefits, with eating vegetables and whatnot, fiber particularly, and all that. And this isn't a conversation about a debate about that stuff because probably message boards will start. But the point is that the ideology is it kind of people that are in places like New York and LA, they see that and they get it, and so it is a concept that's catching on.
And when you say the name of the store is Zealand, what does that mean?
Well, so when my business partner and I was a gentleman that I met many years ago when I was actually working with Zions a long time ago. When we were researching names for our juice company, we looked up everything from vitality to eternity to root to plant to juice to you name it, like anything that could possibly relate in some sort of way to a vegetable or life or rejuvenation or anything like that. We looked up all these words in like Greek, Hebrew, Italian, Portuguese, Latin, English, German. Like we exhausted this in pretty much every language, and basically everything was trademarked. So we took part of his last name and part of my last name. His last name was ZB, my last name was Franklin, and we just called it Zealand, and it kind of has a nice little ring to it, and that's the name that we're going to stick with, and we'll just brand that instead.
Two last questions. We've been asking a lot of our guests about this today. We asked Tito about it. We were talking about it earlier. Joe Rogan brought up on the UFC 159 broadcast that he wants to see the MMA glove evolve because we're seeing a lot of eye pokes and some unfortunate fouls. A lot of people don't think that there is a right answer. It could be a nice idea, but there's no right answer. As someone who has been there for many, many years, you fought with those gloves. Do you think there is a solution out there, or is this just what we have to deal with? Well,
first of all, and I've also been poked in the eye. I had a really, really bad eye poke against Dan Henderson, and I don't know if the picture is still on my website, but I had an amazing picture of my eyeball on the website where you could see it looked like Dan basically took an ice cream scooper out of and kind of chunked a piece of my eyeball out. Oh. and it was really, really a close up. You might want to check that out if you're interested. But anyway, the thing with the gloves, they'll always evolve, because the first adjustment that the UFC made was by they had those closed wrist straps, and now they have the open wrist straps where you can elbow or Velcro them around your wrist, which makes putting the gloves on way, way easier. And I was actually part of that whole process. Like, we'd made suggestions about this and everything, and because at one UFC we wanted to cut the gloves, and I don't know if Stitch was the one that finally came up with the idea for the Velcro, or who that was. I think maybe it was Stitch. But I remember being on the phone and talking with the UFC and with Mark Ratner and the Athletic Commission and giving my 2 cents when that had started. But it's going to be difficult. I'm sure there are ways to, because there are 2 different kinds of eye pokes, Harold. There are the eye pokes with the fingers, and then a lot of people get caught with the corners of those gloves as they come down over the knuckles. And so there will be a way of tailoring those gloves to make them a little bit better, but I think just because of the nature of the glove, you're always going to have problems with that. I mean, heck, you look at, I've seen people get poked in the eye in boxing matches before, and you have these big pillows. Compared to MMA, you have these big pillows of a glove on your hand, and your thumb is attached and everything, and they still get poked in the eye by the thumbs of these gloves and everything. And sometimes when I see boxing matches and I see people get poked, I ask myself, like, how could this possibly even happen in a boxing match? But it does. And it is much safer as that glove appears to be. So I think that there'll be some changes that will be made that perhaps it will decrease the chances of people getting poked in the eye, but the God's honest truth is it's just something that we're always going to be dealing with. I mean, you have loose fingers coming out, and so naturally when you're standing in a stance and you throw a punch, like, your hand should be relaxed before impact. And so your hand is sometimes open and things get caught, and, eyes will end up getting poked.
Chris Weidman, Anderson Silva, who are you picking?
How can you go against Anderson at this point in time? It's just like, I don't know. You can't. I'm not even sure how Anderson is going to end up losing a fight at this point in time. So my money would go on Anderson if I was a gambling man.
Even if he fights John Jones?
That's a different story. Now you're talking about, Anderson is really good at. First of all, let me just say Anderson's been in the game way too long to just let something simple like this completely defeat him. But Anderson is great at using his length and kind of backing away and never taking any real abuse. But that takes on a whole different meaning when you're fighting somebody that has an 84-inch reach that's a lot taller than you. Anderson is one of the taller guys in his weight class, so he hasn't had to deal with those kinds of things. But again, Anderson's smart. They'll bring somebody in that's John Jones-esque and use that as a training partner, and he'll come in completely prepared. So if there was any fight out there that would be really problematic for Anderson, I think that would be the fight.
Rich, so great to catch up with you. Really, really happy that we were able to do this. Good luck with the store coming up. Zealand, it is called, and you explained that perfectly to us. And it's funny how those things work out. You think of some fancy name, and then you just go with your own name, combine it with your partner, and there you go. That, as you mentioned, opens in August in the LA area, and looking forward. Hopefully you come to New York. I think this would be a very good place for that as well. So I wish you nothing but the best of luck with that, and happy to hear that we may see you get to fight again, because I do agree with Matt. There are some interesting fights out there for you. Most importantly, happy to hear you're okay. Thank you for the first interview since the Kung Lee fight, and looking forward to hearing much more from you in the future.
Hey, it's my pleasure, Ariel. Thank you, bro. It was good talking to you today, too.
Yeah, and keep us posted. When the time comes that you're ready to have the grand opening, let us know. We'll get the word out there.
I'll keep you posted on the grand opening, as well as when I sign the next contract for the fight, too.
Deal. Thank you so much, Rich.
All right, bud.
There he is, Rich Ace Franklin, the former UFC middleweight champion, stopping by. Really great to hear from him. Such a smart guy, a true legend in our sport, and a great ambassador as well. And I wouldn't be surprised when his career is over at some point that the UFC doesn't reach out to him to have him do things like Matt Hughes does, Chuck Liddell does. And I know he is setting himself up very well for his post-fighting career. And the juice stuff is I can have like 4 of those juices a day with the kale and the beets and the carrot and all that craziness. I like that very much. I just feel good about myself. At first, it doesn't taste great, I will admit, but I just mentally, I feel good. I feel like I'm doing a good thing for my body. And that is cool. That is cool that he's doing that. So good luck to him. And looking forward to hearing what's next for him as far as his fighting career is concerned. But I do think the UFC, in some way, he's always had a good relationship with them. I think we'll be hearing and seeing a lot of Rich Franklin in the UFC for years to come.